What's up everyone, and welcome to Talking Esports episode 9. My name is ContactZero, and tonight I'm joined by the amazing Munchables. This episode we'll be talking to Munch about casting, the UK scene, I-Series and the ESL UK Prem. So welcome to the show, Munch. How are you feeling today?
Thank you. I'm feeling great, thank you. I've just had our big ESL UK Media Day today and the grand opening of our brand new studio, so off the back of a fantastic day, I'm feeling great, thank you.
Yeah, good. And obviously the highlight of the day is you coming on this show.
Absolutely. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Of course. So I want to start with you, Munch. When you started casting, you originally uploaded videos to YouTube, and this led you to being picked up by the NUEL. But did you actually create the videos because you wanted to be noticed?
Well, I started creating the videos pretty much just to try out casting more than anything else. It was more for me, so I had a recollection almost of what I'd done, so I could look back and actually improve on my casting. I didn't actually my very first casting ever was for a guy called Sean, who his uni dissertation was, he had a really cool uni dissertation where he was like hosting a tournament between some of the teams at his university. So I cast that for him on like one random weekend. And then off the back of that, I was like, hey, this casting lark is pretty cool. I'm going to make some YouTube videos of me doing it. And then before NUEL even happened, or not before NUEL happened, but before I got involved in the NUEL, I actually got picked up by EGL very briefly. And then ended up going to the NUEL.
Okay, cool. So why exactly did you want to begin casting in the first place? Why is it something that you wanted to actually pick up?
I wanted to be part of esports because, for obvious reasons, esports great. And I realized, like, I wanted to be a player, as like every 14-year-old does. I was great at World of Warcraft, but there isn't really any World of Warcraft esports scene. And I was pretty good at StarCraft, but not good enough to compete. And then League of Legends happened, and I was awful at League of Legends. So I was kind of like, okay, so the one game that I've got that I'm really good at, I can't actually compete in because there is no scene. So how do I get involved with this? I know, I'll just talk about stuff. I'll just, like, I'm a pretty opinionated guy. I could do that on a camera. Like, let's try this out and see how it goes. And I just did a Reddit post basically saying, like, how the hell do you get involved in commentating? And that is when Sean got involved, because he messaged me through the Reddit post. And then, yeah, that's the snowball started rolling, I suppose.
That's cool. So from there, like I said, you were picked up from the NUEL. What was it like working for the NUEL?
Working for the NUEL was great. I was with the NUEL for, I don't actually know exactly how long, but it was around a year, maybe slightly less, maybe slightly more, but approximately a year. And actually maybe longer than that. I can't really remember. My memory is appalling, by the way, just to say that. But working with the NUEL was fantastic. It's obviously, in case anyone doesn't know what the NUEL is, it's the National University Esports League. If you're at university, definitely check them out and get involved. You can basically just join a team, play in a tournament, and have a good time. And if you're really good, you can actually play for, like, I think the prize this year was tickets to the LCS playoffs. So there's some really cool stuff going on, and you can just win RP or go to events and things. It's really, really good. And really good as well, just in terms of creating community and things. But my actual time at the NUEL, I obviously did a lot of casting for them over the course of the year, because it was basically every Sunday I would be casting for them. And through the NUEL, I ended up casting a lot of other stuff, such as my very first, like, kind of LAN, I suppose, was King of the North, which was held at the University of Manchester. And that was through the NUEL, because the NUEL was kind of partnered with them, helping them out. So I ended up, because of the NUEL, making a lot of contacts and also getting a lot of extra kind of experience and things. And then because of the exposure the NUEL was giving me and the practice I was getting on a regular basis, I then started doing I-Series, started doing stuff for ESL UK. It all kind of built up. But the NUEL itself is a fantastic organization. Definitely would recommend, if you want to get into esports, and you're just looking to try and get some voluntary experience, the NUEL is a fantastic place to start, because they have kind of a volunteer level version of pretty much every aspect of the industry in terms of from a tournament organizer's perspective. It's almost like a mini voluntary ESL to some extent, except university based. So it's definitely a fantastic place to start, and Josh is an absolutely fantastic guy. Can't sing his praises enough. He's done some incredible things with that company, and I really hope it continues to grow for him.
Yeah, I think it will. It's how many years now? Like 4, maybe 5 years. And yeah, it's supposed to have like 300 teams or something this year. And to be able to basically say that you're the best in the league, as Astronauts have been able to, is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, Birmingham are still forever second. Oh, actually, no, they weren't even second this year.
This year, they broke the curse, but in the wrong way.
I helped coin the meme forever second for Birmingham. But it was cool, actually, because I was at the NUEL Live finals doing production. I think I was doing replays that day. And half of the Cambridge team, or like 4 out of the 5 players, were the same Cambridge team that I had cast while I was at the NUEL. So it was kind of almost like a throwback sort of thing. A lot of nostalgia that day.
Yeah. So were there any other things apart from casting that you did while you were at the NUEL to basically help them out?
All sorts, to be honest. Kind of got mucked in a lot of different aspects. Like, casting was my major responsibility. While I was there, I was the primary streamer, so I would actually stream the games from home, and like organize or try and organize lobbies and things, and little bits like that. And when it came to actually live events, when it came to running the first NUEL Live and stuff, I had a hand in trying to help out with that. I'm not gonna like try and claim that I was like this massive factor in the NUEL. Like, for a lot of the NUEL, I kind of personally I saw it as like a platform for me to practice my commentary. So I wasn't like super involved. It wasn't like the NUEL was my life at the time, so I'm not going to claim that it was. And I'm not going to take much credit from them, because they are a fantastic organization. And so at some points while I was in the NUEL, I don't feel like I kind of gave it 100%. But I certainly gained a lot of experience through the NUEL, and there was lots of different little bits that I helped in, but the vast majority of my actual responsibility was casting and like stream related stuff. So it was basically just like any kind of broadcast related stuff is what I would be helping out with, which is a coincidence because it happens to be similar to my current job.
Yeah. So, when you're obviously streaming and you have to actually control the camera as well as cast, does that not affect you anyway, or do you just get used to it?
It is a lot easier to cast while you're not doing the observer work as well. For those of you that might not know, the League of Legends auto-directed camera is pretty terrible. So typically speaking, in larger tournaments, someone will be a dedicated observer and just spectate the game. Because I've done casting and observing and stuff for so long, I do that for UK Premiership. So I control the camera in game while casting. So it does affect being able to commentate to some extent. Like, it's not the end of the world though. I have spoken to casters and they've previously said to me like, "Oh, you can't observe and cast at the same time. That's not possible." Yeah. Like it's the end of it's not really that big of a deal. I think people exaggerate it a lot, but it certainly helps to be able to just concentrate on one specific thing. Especially, I've very much got like a one-track mind, so it's sometimes a lot harder. This is Matt Loftus sneaking onto the webcam. At Matcha on Twitter, or ESL Matcha or something. I can't remember what his Twitter is. He's not famous enough for me, I'm afraid, Matt. But yeah, no, it somewhat detracts from the cast, but you get used to it, and it's not it's not the end of the world.
Okay, cool. So after the NUEL, you saw a job opportunity for ESL and had already been doing freelance for them. What was it about the ESL that made you want to join them?
Well, I mean, obviously on paper, the very first thing is kind of like, oh my God, a job talking about esports. Like, you know, that's kind of what I'd been building towards. It was like, at that point in my life, it was kind of like, there's Riot and there's ESL, and like, who else is there that I could work for, really? And then ESL UK put up their job, and it was like, holy crap, not only is it one of these massive companies, but it's also specifically UK stuff, which I already know an absolute ton about. Like, I've been doing it UK esports for like the last 2 years, it was at the time, or 2.5 years or something. So it was like, it was absolutely fantastic. And I'd actually done some freelance stuff with them very recently, so I'd been speaking to them. So I put my application in there, and it was kind of like, why on earth would I not want this job? Because it's like, with the leading company in esports tournaments, in esports in general, it's the leading esports company in the world. So it's kind of, there was no feasible reason why I wouldn't want to apply for the job, you know?
Yeah.
And also, a little shout out, I was actually, I don't know what that says. Someone's trying to show me a note, but I have no idea what it said. But I was actually the very first full-time employed caster within the UK. Not the very first UK caster. Everyone's just photobombing me today. This is Richard, my creative director. You're now famous on the internet, Richard. Congratulations. There are 9 people currently. But yeah, so my train of thought's gone completely. What was I saying before Richard arrived?
I can't even remember. He distracted me too.
Oh, there you go.
You said, well, just basically why you wanted to join ESL, and then you said you were going to make a shout out, but then that was it.
The very first full-time employed shoutcaster within the UK. Not first UK shoutcaster, because like obviously D-Man, Joe Miller, etc. But within the UK, it was the first. So
that's a pretty awesome title.
Yeah. I wish there was less T's and C's behind it. I wish I didn't have to do terms and conditions to shout it out.
Yeah, unfortunately, but what can you do? So obviously with ESL, you've casted a whole variety of games, including CSGO, League of Legends, Hearthstone, and Guild Wars 2. Was this something you actively pursued, or did ESL ask you to branch out into these games?
A mix of the two. I actually have cast 6 games now professionally for ESL. I've done League of Legends, CSGO, Hearthstone, Rainbow Six Siege, Battlefield 4. I've just done Rocket League today, actually, and then Guild Wars 2. So 7 games now, in fact.
Awesome.
But yeah, like a mix of the two. So like Rainbow Six Siege, I actively looked to try and like cast that. That was something that I tried to get in with, and like sent emails and things to try and become part of the broadcast for the Pro League. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because it's being broadcast from Poland. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to cast the regular Pro League for it, but it did mean that I got to cast the first week of it over at IEM Katowice. And in terms of the Premiership stuff, League and CSGO were kind of the 2 requirements for this job. That was like when this job first went up. The job's changed a lot since I very first joined the company, but when it first came up, it was kind of, this is the position for the caster for the Premiership. So League of Legends and CSGO are your 2 major responsibilities. And then Guild Wars 2 Pro League cropped up, and it was kind of a mix of, I wanted to get into more games, and also there wasn't huge amounts of available talent for Guild Wars, at least within the UK. So it was kind of we also need a caster for this. This isn't something that we have much breathing room with. So to some extent, I didn't necessarily have a choice when it came to Guild Wars, but at the same time, I wanted to do Guild Wars anyway. And so long as, it's basically, the way it works is, if there's a new game, I have the option to cast it should I want to. But if I don't want to cast that or whatever, I have to be able to therefore replace myself with something, another feasible option. I need to give the company another way of dealing with it.
Yeah, okay. So these games are like very unique in their playstyle, obviously. So how do you adapt to casting different games?
That's kind of an interesting question. I suppose it very much depends on what the game is. Like League of Legends is very much. It's a similar commentary style to football, I suppose, in terms of there are high points, there are low points, but it's a fairly long game. There's a lot of build up to it, and then sudden moments of like hype and excitement. Whereas then you've got like CS:GO, there's every like sort of 2 minutes there's a build up to a hype point and then a drop for the start of the next round. So it's very, very different immediately. And the only way to work out how you want to tackle that and things is to watch broadcasts of it and to just practice and see what works, see what doesn't work. Because there's not really any books or anything on how to cast certain esports at this stage. We're still a very young industry, so you kind of just have to make it up as you go along to some extent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which game is your favorite to cast?
Probably. I mean, League. League is always going to be Bay, I think. League is where I started, and League is the one that got me into commentary in the first place. Currently, really enjoying Hearthstone, just because it's only just begun. It's like brand new thing, and it's a completely different commentary style to anything I've done before. So I'm enjoying that kind of new area. Rocket League is pretty fun to cast. It's kind of just a mess, though. I wouldn't want to cast Rocket League really on a regular basis, I don't think, but it's fun as a one-off. But I think the top three would definitely be League of Legends, Guild Wars 2, and then Hearthstone, CS. I guess League of Legends and Guild Wars 2, I would say, are my two favorites.
Okay. So, in terms of advice, what would you give to aspiring casters who wish to get involved in the UK scene?
Join the NUEL would be my advice. To get involved with the UK scene, like the way I see the UK scene ever since Epic Land kind of stepped out of the running is you've got like there's this kind of void in the UK and just in casting in general where there's like this professional level and then there's this huge gap between that and then kind of amateur level, and there are a couple of casters occasionally that are somewhere in between that, but it's very rare that you see a caster that's somewhere in between that, and it seems like there's just someone flicks a switch and then suddenly that caster steps up to the professional level kind of thing. It's kind of hard to explain without giving a lot of examples and things. I don't want to go into that in too much detail because then I'm like calling people out and things, but to actually get involved yourself, obviously you're going to kind of be starting on the bottom rung, and I would say the first step is like actually try commentating, like grab a friend or someone and just try commentating, like record yourself, watch it back and say, is this actually like, am I entertained watching this? If you're bored within the first like 5 minutes of watching, then you need to assess whether that's because of you or whether that's because of something else. And if it's directly because of you, can you change that? Because if not, like, it might just be a matter of like you have an annoying voice, like there's nothing you can do about that. Commentary is all about having a voice people want to listen to. So if you have a really annoying voice, maybe it's just not for you, the story, that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. But then I would say like join voluntary organizations like the NUEL. For example, NUEL's fantastic because you've got regular. Oh yeah, actually Gary pointing out in chat there, the UCaster UK Shoutcaster Facebook group. You can get involved there, and people regularly post events and things that you can cast. It's mostly online stuff, but it's a fantastic place for not only getting your name out there, but also building your repertoire, building your kind of portfolio of previous work, and like getting VODs for yourself. But yeah, that, doing voluntary stuff, organize a tournament, like create a tournament. Most UK teams are going to be more than happy to get involved. Like, even if you don't have much of a prize, you can get the Riot RP prize pooling. This is something that I was working on before I got picked up by ESL. I was going to try and run a UK tournament, but then that all kind of fell through because I got the job at ESL and stuff. But yeah, like, get involved in the scene. The number one thing that is going to get you noticed as a caster is actually actively being involved in the scene, not just when you're casting, you know, like caring about the scene in general, caring about the growth of the UK scene, caring about the teams, caring about the players, you know, like actually actively being involved, being invested, like people are with the LCS. You've got to be like that with the UK scene. Otherwise, you're just kind of another name. But if people see you everywhere, then you're going to naturally build up that repertoire. I mean, there's people in the UK scene who are literally just spectators, but everyone knows who they are. If you can get that going, and you're a commentator as well, people will know of you as a commentator, and that's a great way to build up your name. And also, it's great for the UK scene.
Yeah, I actually did a tournament for League of Legends. I can't remember if it was 2014 or 2015. I feel like it was last year, with a £250 prize pool, but it was winner takes all. And we invited loads of the UK shoutcasters from that Facebook group. And I think we had 8 different casters throughout the entire tournament because it was 4 different weeks. Maybe it was a bit more than that. I can't remember. I have a feeling it was 2 different casters every week, but I'm not sure. And I want to do another one, but this time it might be for Rocket League instead, since I've kind of hooked onto Rocket League now.
Rocket League's great.
It's just so fun. I started playing it only Friday, I think, and I've already played like 12, 14 hours or something. So yeah, it's pretty good. I didn't actually get to touch upon this with Excoundrel in episode 7, but I know he prefers freelance. Since you've done both, what are your thoughts on freelance casting compared to what you're doing, which is obviously working with an organisation full time?
So it's, I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both, really. Like, I mean, obviously, from a freelance perspective, if you are the go-to guy, then it's amazing. Like, you get the money, like you get the regular streams, like that can become a full-time job, which is fantastic. You are your own boss at that point, which, like, that's like the American dream or whatever, you know, like you want to be your own boss and you want to be doing what you enjoy doing. So in theory, freelance casting is the real deal, but there are only so many spots available, you know? So it's kind of only 2 or 3 people can really live that dream. There's only so much space for that. Like, especially within the UK scene, there's just not enough gigs for that to realistically be an applicable, like, career, especially for more than 1 or 2, maybe 3 people. Like, it's great. Like, one thing you have to bear in mind as well is Excoundrel and Sona, these people that have been doing freelance for a long time, it's not actually their full-time career. Like, Sona is a full-time doctor, and Excoundrel Kiernan is he's a trainee doctor, so he's at university. So this is like, it's like financial supplement, it's not a full-time job. So, like, you have to bear in mind, in the context of the UK scene, it's currently not very viable. But in the grand scheme of things, like, say, if you're talking like on a global level, if you're talking like Monte Cristo, like Doha, like PapaSmithy, I mean, we all saw I'm sure the drama about them not doing MSI because Riot won't pay them enough and all this. Like, in that specific scenario, or in fact, a better example is Anders and Semler. Anders and Semler are at the top of the CSGO ladder for casters. They can easily afford to. They're on a very, very good salary as freelance casters. And very likely, like, I'm not gonna, even if I did know the wages of like the casters in Colognes compared to Anders and Selma, I wouldn't go into it. I don't even know the numbers, but I would assume they are earning a lot more than the full-time contracted casters, because they are like they're the top of the scene. You know, they're the casters that everybody wants, and if you're in that position, then you can kind of charge what you like, and organizers will pay that. But you have no job safety. If you stop being the favorite and you fall out of favor, then you very quickly find yourself with not a whole lot. Whereas if you're working with an organization, you obviously have that safety net. Like I have job security. Like, I mean, obviously, if my casting gets terrible, then like I'll know about it and I'll have to improve on it. And in my eyes, that's a good thing. Like, I don't ever want to get lazy. But like the job security is definitely a big thing for me. But also like the doors that being on an organization opens. Like the fact that I work for ESL is like, I've done ESL 1 Cologne and I've done IM Katowice, neither of which I would have been able to do if I didn't work for ESL. I wouldn't have had either of those gigs. Both of those were on games that I learned specifically for the event. So ESL, as a company, took kind of that risk with me because I was an employee of theirs, that I would learn the game and commentate it to a professional level at those events for them. So there's a lot of trust that you gain with the organization being an actual employee for them as well. So I would say there are more upsides than downsides to being a contracted caster, unless you are the very best.
So it's basically like high risk, high reward if you're a freelance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Well, mentioning Excoundrel, you guys casted the first week of the ESL UK Premiership for Hearthstone. Like, how was that experience?
It was great. It was me, Excoundrel, and a guy called Dan Gaskin, who is a Halo caster. The other two did a absolutely amazing job. Stonking performance from both of them. I personally was not very happy with my own performance during that broadcast. And I've watched over the VODs. I'm working on a lot of stuff to make week 2 a much better broadcast from me personally. But I think the broadcast overall, for the very first time ESL UK had ever done Hearthstone, and the very first episode of that broadcast, of the Premiership for Hearthstone, I think that actually went very, very well. And also we had some good games. Like the second series between Raven and Sottle was like a fantastic series of Hearthstone. So I think the stream in general went very well. I think the commentary from the other two guys was extremely good as well. So
yeah, all the other three were 3-0, weren't they? 3-0 series, I think.
Yeah, the other three were 3-0s, but they weren't complete. Like the thing is, with a 3-0 isn't necessarily a stomp, because you could have 3 really close games that one team manages to get 3 victories. So I don't feel like the other 3 games were super stomps or anything like that. There was a couple of games that were just stomps, but the majority of the games were decent games, and someone managed to kind of just prove that they were kind of the balance was like 65-35 rather than I didn't feel like any of it was kind of like this guy is just clearly superior to the other sort of thing.
Yeah. So what do you think about Excoundrel actually transitioning over to Hearthstone from League of Legends?
I think it's a fantastic move for him. Like, he loves Hearthstone. He's got a lot of transferable skills. He's been doing League of Legends for a very long time. He's been doing broadcasting for a very long time. So I think at this point, he's at a position in his career that he can choose to take those skills and that experience where he feels the path is kind of most bright for him. So he can... I think the transition to Hearthstone will be just about seamless, because he's a very, very good player himself. And it's going to be sad to see him leaving League of Legends. Obviously, me and him cast a lot over the years. But at the end of the day, commentary is something that you aren't ever going to be able to do very well unless you have passion for the game. It comes across very obviously if you're bored or unexcited by the game that you're watching. So I think he knows that he's kind of this is something he said to me. He's kind of to some extent lost that enthusiasm for League of Legends, which is a vital factor. So I think he's actually gaining that back recently. So I don't think that's necessarily true anymore anyway. And I didn't personally notice it necessarily in his commentary. I still think he's a fantastic commentator for League of Legends. But yeah, I'm gonna be very sad to see him leave League of Legends. But I definitely think he'll land on his feet. I definitely think there's a lot of things that he has the ability to step into, and I don't think he's gonna struggle to continue doing freelance work.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Hearthstone Premiership since we touched upon it. Who would you say is the favourite for the Premiership? Is there a clear favourite?
So in terms of the Hearthstone Premiership,
yeah,
first of all, it's very hard to call because there are like 3 players in that tournament that are somewhat unknown factors, and one of them, Hello Leroy, got a 3-0 against Ball Control this week. After I talked to him quite a bit, and he was saying like that he was really not very confident and unsure about how this was all going to go. He definitely felt like on paper he was the 8th player on the list kind of thing. And he 3-0'd convincingly Board Control. He did a really, really good job. So, like, any kind of preconceptions of how the standings might be were already kind of thrown off a little bit. I will say, Green Sheep looks like one of the players that is very likely to get to finals. I'm not going to call who I think is going to win because it's way, way too early to confidently say anything. But I think Green Sheep is a definite factor. I think Sottle in the long run will be a definite factor. And then, I mean, obviously, the fact that Raven took Sottle to 3 games says that he's a very good player because I've just mentioned I think Sottle's one of the favorites. But, like, I mean, I want to say, like, Mysterious. Mysterious got a 3-0 in the first week, and it was kind of out of the blue. Like, Mysterious, there was almost like a meme going on throughout the stream that Mysterious was this player we didn't really know a whole lot about, ironically, because of his name. But actually, he looked very, very strong, and he definitely could be a contender. He could be like a dark horse that we've just not known about. Maybe he's a brand new player that's just kind of stepping into esports for the first time, and this happens to be a fantastic forum for him to play in.
How much do you think that, because obviously it was invited players versus qualified players, like, how much do you think the unknown factor of some of those players helped them?
Well, I mean, it definitely helps them. Like, you've got players like Green Sheep, who everybody has seen play lots of times in the past. So he automatically, to some extent, is at a disadvantage just because people can scout him. People know his decks. People know his playstyle. And then, I mean, I just mentioned Mysterious. You've got Mysterious, Osher, Hello Leroy, and another invited player that has slipped to my mind now. But the 4 of these players that you don't necessarily know what they're going to bring to the table, and it definitely could be a spanner in the works for the players like Green Sheep, like Sottle, who are going to want to scout their opponents. They're not going to have that opportunity. So later on in the Premiership, that's kind of only really a factor for the first sort of, I would say, 2 weeks, because beyond that point, you've had 3 or 4 or 5 games broadcast of your playing, so people will have content to analyze. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a major factor. I don't think that's enough of a factor to affect results at the end of the Premiership, but I do think it's something to bear in mind looking at the first, second, and maybe third week.
Yeah, fair enough. I didn't actually catch Hearthstone live. I watched the VOD afterwards. But like, how big is Hearthstone in the UK? Like, what was the viewership like?
Hearthstone is one of the biggest esports in the UK. I don't actually know the numbers for viewership off the top of my head, but that wouldn't typically be information that's published anyway. I couldn't have told you the numbers regardless whether I knew them or not. But within the UK, Hearthstone is one of the biggest esports. I mean, if you look at the True Silver Champion, the multiplayer runs, that has absolutely blown up because of the sponsorship they've had. They've been able to put up such a good prize pool that has driven UK Hearthstone massively. And Hearthstone in general, in the grand scheme of things, if you ever look on Twitch.tv, just on the most played games, third spot is almost always Hearthstone. It's usually League of Legends, CSGO, Hearthstone. So that says a lot about the size of Hearthstone. And the UK already has some very, very strong talent for Hearthstone, not just in terms of casters, but also in terms of players. So I definitely think this is an esport that is currently growing very fast within the UK and will continue to do so because it's so accessible.
Well, speaking about viewership then, let's talk about iSeries because, well, and also signups. Like, the amount of signups for League of Legends, they were super low. We only had 16 teams sign up. But if you compare this to Rocket League, which had 28 teams, and Counter-Strike, which had 56 teams, it really isn't looking good for League. What are your thoughts on the low turnout for League of Legends?
So League of Legends within the UK is an interesting thing because you've got a lot of veteran players who have been in the scene for a very long time, and you don't actually have very many new players. Now, I've been trying to put this, like, I've been trying to put my finger on why this is for quite a long time, and I think honestly, the level of gameplay within the UK, especially recently, has really, really picked up. Like, teams have actually been actively improving, and we've seen a lot of active kind of growth in terms of player ability and in terms of talent within the UK over the last sort of 2 or 3 months. And actually, in terms of the UK Premiership, we've seen growth in viewership as well over the course of the season. But I can't tell whether it's just a matter of UK players not really wanting to compete for League, or whether it's that it's quite a daunting scene and there's not very many ways in if you're a straight up amateur team. I mean, there are a lot of community tournaments run by ESL that you can get involved on. Just go play.esl.com or play.eslgaming.com even. There's loads of community tournaments that are run that you and your team can practice in. I don't know whether it's just a matter of people not knowing about that, or, I mean, since Epic LAN went, that really hurt the scene. But Epic LAN went because the scene was already hurting. Like, Epic LAN's team signups went down 3 epics in a row. That's why they cut League. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just the case. So it's, I don't know, unless someone works out what the issue is and somehow inspires people to start playing, then I fear that maybe in a year or two's time, UK League of Legends might have continued to sink. We'll have to wait and see. I can't predict that. I really hope that's not the case because I love UK League of Legends. And I'm doing everything I can to try and boost and promote and grow UK League of Legends. But the signups are dwindling. That's just a fact. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, whether anyone can kind of fix that decline.
I mean, we could say at least there are more org represented teams involved, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But this iSeries, there were basically no amateur teams at all. Like, one of the amateur teams that was involved actually had 2 of the UOB guys in it, who are obviously part of NUEL. And I think there was like maybe 2 other teams. So I was checking the numbers from last spring to this spring for multiplayer's iSeries. League had 32 teams, and so that's obviously halved. I know that's good maths. And CSGO had 48, and it's gone up by 8. So I was trying to think what could actually cause this, but I'm struggling to think of a definitive reason. I don't know if it's something to do with the fact that like games like Heroes, Overwatch is coming, Rocket League, and CS:GO are getting more popular. Maybe people just enjoy more fast-paced, like action-based games in the UK. You look at League right now, and the meta's shifted to become quite strategic, which might make it more boring for the casual player.
The thing is, it's been too long term of a problem for it to just be like,
true.
oh, the meta's like this, so people don't want to play it. It's definitely not to do with the meta of League of Legends. I don't honestly think it's that much to do with the game League of Legends. I think it's to do with the scene specifically. I think it's just too difficult to get into the scene as a new amateur player. Like, if say I was not a caster, say I'm just like a random person and I'm like Diamond 2 or something, and I want to get into the UK scene, like there's not really an easy route in there. Unless you already know people, how do you get onto one of the teams in the Premiership? Who do you message? Who do you... Like, what's the preemptive step there? Now, and that's kind of an issue of the way League of Legends works. Like, with CSGO, it's very easy to just plug and play a player, because the best teams are going to have built up strategies and things, but the way CSGO works is if you are good at the game, if you're just good at getting headshots, you're still going to have a spot on the team, because you're just going to get those kills, and that's all that you need to do. Strategy doesn't have to apply to every single player. In League of Legends, that's not the case. You have to have a coordinated team, and yes, you do get some teams that are just very good at the game. Look at like Moscow 5, for example, when they first happened. They weren't like these strategic geniuses. They just went balls to the wall, and it worked wonders because they were really good at the game. You know, like that is going to happen, but it's much more difficult to achieve in League of Legends. And as well, Moscow 5, they were so in sync with one another. They were all on the same page that it worked out. So I think it's very difficult for an individual player to actually find a way into the scene. Like, find 5 players that want to play competitive League of Legends and push towards getting into the UK scene. Like, from an amateur perspective, it's quite inaccessible, I think. And that is in part due to the lack of Epic LAN, because Epic LAN, you could just turn up and meet 4 other people there and be like, hey, let's just play in the league tournament. Whereas you can't do that now. You can't really do that with Insomnia as much. You can to some extent with Insomnia, but not in... Insomnia is taken more seriously as a tournament than Epic LAN is, or especially in terms of League of Legends, in my experience of casting them both. Like, Epic LAN's sort of taken as the top like 3 or 4 teams will take it super seriously, but the rest of everyone else is just there for a good time kind of thing. So it's very difficult to like find a way into the scene, find a way to get onto these teams, to message these players, and to actually become part of the UK scene.
Well, if we're talking about, obviously, it's hard to get in. Following up from that, I was also keeping an eye on the viewership, which obviously you don't really need to be involved so much to play. You just watch the game as a spectator. But the finals for Rocket League at 10 PM had 4K viewers. CSGO, which was at 1 AM, had about 4K views as well. But League, which was at 3 PM, which is probably ideal for broadcasting in my opinion, only had 400 views, which is 10 times less than the others. So what is going on here, do you think?
Well, the first thing, like directly comparing CSGO and League of Legends, is CSGO Lounge exists. So it's a difficult direct comparison to make, because there are a lot of people that just watch CSGO because they've bet skins on it. And if ZenX beats Infused, then they get a new Dragon Lore, you know. So it's difficult to directly compare like that. I mean, I don't really know what else to add aside from what I just said about the scene, about kind of there's not that much change within the scene, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. I think this season, I mean, as I mentioned before, for the Premiership specifically for League of Legends, viewership has been growing across the course of the season. So I'm not sure. Did you say 300 views for League of Legends?
So about 400. But like I said, Rocket League also had 10 times that amount too, which is really strange for me.
Was this Insomnia's numbers?
Yeah, Insomnia's, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Because obviously ESL that gets a bit more than that.
Yeah. So the number one thing, in my opinion, and this isn't like firing shots. This is just how I personally felt while I was casting Insomnia. And I don't know if this is still the case or not. I've not kept up to it closely. When I was casting League of Legends for Insomnia, I personally was kind of frustrated at the lack of like social media coverage of the League of Legends. Like the qualifiers and the actual tournament itself didn't really get much of a shout out or any kind of social media attention. There was like 1 or 2 tweets from multiplayer, but that was kind of it. And like at the time, that was what frustrated me. I don't know if that's still the case. I'm not trying to directly blame that specifically, but I think as well it's just a matter of, if there's no new people in the scene, if there's no way into the scene for new people, who watches then? Because it's the new people that are going to be watching, surely.
Yeah. Obviously, I wish I knew the answer, because we'd be able to solve the problem then, but it is super difficult.
I think the biggest thing is consistency in broadcast, and like, I mean, it's difficult to directly compare like UK Premiership to Insomnia anyway, because the format is so dramatically different. Like Insomnia is a one-off event. There is no real build-up to that. So it's not really fair to directly compare our viewership to their viewership, because ours has been building over time, and the entire season has been building over time. Like that's the entire point of the Premiership's structure, is it's a regular season followed by playoffs. So like it naturally makes sense for that viewership to build over time. Whereas Insomnia, for obvious reasons, doesn't have that, and there's not really a way for that to be implemented for Insomnia unless they do like an online lead up to the event. But I don't know, I think maybe just honestly, League of Legends needs some love from some organization in the UK. Like, I mean, look at Hearthstone. Hearthstone got this massive amount of money thrown at it in terms of sponsorship for the True Silver Champion. And viewership went through the roof because more players wanted to play in it, and there was more incentive, and yada, 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 yada. Like, maybe UK League of Legends just needs a huge cash injection, but where that comes from, you tell me, man. I don't like how you persuade a company to just randomly throw a crap load of money at something that's currently dwindling is, I don't know. I don't even know how to start that conversation.
You need some very impressive persuasion skills or a very good presentation to convince someone in that regard.
Yeah. Just to clarify that point as well, that wasn't me saying I think that all UK League of Legends needs is more money. That is not the case.
No. Well, moving on then, we're actually getting to the final stages of the ESL League of Legends Premiership now, which is obviously happening this weekend, and they're happening in Leicester, is that right?
That is right, and in fact, I'm going to link the tickets in the Twitch chat. So there you go, that's where you can buy your tickets for the ESL UK Premiership, which I have a little badge for. Check that out. That's so. It's going to be this weekend. Wednesday is the 7th week of the Premiership. We'll find out who our first seed is going to be and who is going to be going to playoffs. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic weekend. We've got semis on the Saturday, followed by the finals on the Sunday. It's going to be great. Come to Leicester. Come see our brand new studio that is absolutely awesome. And enjoy some UK League of Legends.
So we obviously already know the top 4 teams that are going, which are Renegades, Manalight, Excoundrel, and Choke. Well, actually, these teams are playing for seeding this week. All the teams are playing for their final standings anyway. We don't actually know the top 8 yet. in terms of where they're going to finally finish, because Renegades and Manalight are playing for first and second, Exodus and Choke are playing for third and fourth, you know, etc.
It's going to be a good week.
Yeah, it's
I'm
going to be really
excited for these
interesting.
games.
I mean, CBA and FM are playing to find out who can actually win a game this season.
Well, I mean, I think technically FM has already lost all of their games or something. I think they technically defaulted or something. I'm not 100%
Oh, have they?
sure.
Okay, well, unlucky then. I was
I
actually...
don't 100% know on that. I'm just looking at the scoreboard now. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, while it's a kind of a fun storyline to kind of poke, FM versus CBA, or what used to be Infused, no offense to them, I don't really mind what the result is. Like,
Yeah.
you still only won one game all season.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
the end of the world. I'm more interested in TCA versus M&M because it's kind of, okay, we're the guys right below the top four. Maybe next season we can be top four kind of thing. It's that reaching for glory storyline. And then, obviously, first and second between Renegades and Manalight, which, if Insomnia is anything to go by, is going to be one hell of a match.
Yeah, definitely.
And third and fourth Choke versus Exertus is definitely going to be a good one as well. Like, the thing is, for the first time in a long time for UK League of Legends, it's actually really difficult to call who is going to be, like, especially third and fourth seed. I actually think between Exertus and Choke, it is very, very close. And Manalight versus Banditos, like, Banditos had a weighted advantage at Insomnia, and it was 3-2. So the actual series went 2-2.
Yeah.
So honestly, that could go either way as well.
Who do you think? Well, I guess you don't think you have a favorite.
I'm not going to give predictions.
No, no predictions. Okay.
I'm casting it, so it's not really fair for me to say I think this team's going to win or whatever.
Yeah. I was actually...
If I wasn't casting it, I would do predictions.
Okay. I was actually interested to find out, like, say both CBA and FM forfeited. Like, what would you guys do about that? Would you both put them 0-7?
If they forfeit, they both go 0-7, yeah. Well, I suppose 1-6 or whatever. I don't really know how that works. I've never had to work out that situation. But
that would be pretty interesting, I think.
I mean, if they forfeit, I don't actually know, like, the rules off by heart, and this is something that I wouldn't have to deal with, so I don't need to know. But I would assume that they kind of forfeit prize money that they would have earned, and, you know, all that stuff. So I guess that is then... I don't know. I don't really know what the rules are in that situation, to be quite honest. But at the end of the day, if they forfeit, they automatically... I don't know if they play in the next qualification or whether they just automatically relegate if they forfeit. I think they still get a spot in the qualification, or maybe it's an... No, that's it. It's an invite slot in the next qualification. So if you forfeit, you automatically relegate. Okay. So... and then there's an invite slot opened up in the qualification tournament. I believe that's correct. Don't quote me on that. If you want to know the rules, go on the website. Don't ask me for the rules. But if the bottom two teams forfeit, in the grand scheme of things, generally speaking, the other teams were going to beat them anyway in terms of standings. So it doesn't really affect the actual tournament all that much. It more affects the players in those teams, and it just affects people's view of the UK scene. Like, it's upsetting how consistently teams just fall apart in the UK. Like, the thing is about League of Legends, like, the longer you stay together, generally speaking, it often leads to just you guys being a better team. Like, I don't think it's that difficult to stay together for 7 weeks. Maybe I'm just frustrated because I've seen it happen so many times, but I mean, look at the top, like, 3 teams that haven't really changed all season, or at least not significantly and not permanently. So it's like, there's a correlation there. I'm not saying it's 100% causation, but I'm definitely saying there's a trend, you know, like...
I'm actually really looking forward to the playoffs. I'm going to try my best to get down there, but we'll see if I can actually... Well, I don't know, I'd have to book a hotel or something, because I'd want to go both days, obviously, and see both both sets of games. So actually, if you
I think if you can't go for both days, I'd definitely say day 2 is the one to
yeah,
go for, because it's the finals.
yeah,
We
yeah.
want to see who the champion is.
I'm obviously imagining that we're going to see both Renegades and Manalight in the final, because plus that would be so fun to watch again for a full like best of 5 set instead of just the 4 games that we saw at I-Series. Well, for the finals anyway.
Wait and see. We'll have to
Yeah,
wait and
yeah.
see.
No, I'm not
I mean,
asking you. Don't worry.
on paper, it would look like that will be the case.
Yeah.
But things can change. I'm sure Exertus and Choke are practicing very hard right now, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see what they can bring to the
Upsets in
table. I think I can't remember if Exodus actually took a game off Manalight at I-Series. I feel like they did. So you never know what will happen on the day. Whoever brings their A game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a few questions actually from the audience to ask you, Munch. So
Okay.
Derry Holt, or as some people might know as Desertu, he's asked, what 3 key qualities do you think makes a great caster?
Well, first and most important quality for a caster, in my opinion, and this is something that took me way too long to learn, is just confidence. Simply being confident, like in what you're saying. Like if you don't believe what you're saying, no one else is ever going to believe what you're saying. So, like you've got to believe in you, or no one else will. So like just simply being confident, if whether it's on camera, whether it's just your voice, you have to be your #1 fan, because if you can't look at yourself in the mirror and say, I want to follow that guy on Twitter, or I want to listen to this guy talk, then why would anyone else do that? So you've got to give the audience reasons to like you. You've got to give the audience reasons to want you to cast future games. That would be the #1. And the #1 thing there is confidence, because people like confident people. Second thing I would say is probably a good voice. Maybe that's #1, just a good voice. Like, have a voice that people like to hear. It's simple as that. You've got to have it. If you don't have it, then unlucky. And then third, I guess, just being likable. I guess that's kind of the first one I talked about. I don't know what the third one would be. Maybe just practice. I know that's not really a quality, but it's the most important thing. Like, I was pretty garbage when I first started casting, and if I hadn't practiced as much as I did, then I would still be garbage. So it's like, I know it's like the super old and boring thing of like practice makes perfect, but it's simply true. Like, if you don't practice, you're never going to get better. If you don't watch your VODs, you're never going to know what mistakes you're making to improve on them. So that would be my third one.
Yeah. And then he also asks, are there any games that could challenge League of Legends or CSGO for their relatively undisputed title as the 2 largest esports, in your opinion?
Right now, League of Legends and CSGO are #1 and #2. It's simple as that. Right now, there is nothing contesting them. Hearthstone is growing, and I don't think it's going to overtake anytime soon. Maybe in like a year and a half or something could overtake. I think League of Legends is on the decline in general, and I think it will continue to be. So I think that's just a matter of course, that games get old, fan bases move on. Look at Brood War. Brood War was so unbelievably popular in its prime, but it was never going to compete with the next generation of games. That's just how it is. And StarCraft 2 came out, and everyone moved on to StarCraft 2. So, like, I think League of Legends has had a fantastic run. I don't think it's like don't get me wrong, I don't think League of Legends is dead, and I don't think it's going to be dead for a very long time, but I do think that I think like Season 4 Worlds was maybe peak. Maybe Season 5 Worlds, I don't know. But like around then, that's kind of when it sort of plateaued, and I think now we're like on the very start of decline for League of Legends. So I think CS:GO will become the #1 esport, and I think #2 esport will be, who knows, like there could be like Paragon could step in, or Overwatch, or maybe it's Hearthstone. I don't really think Hearthstone will be #2 just because it's a card game and not enough people can get into card games. I think it's too strategic for just general audience. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what will kind of appear out of the blue? But you know, Overwatch definitely looks very promising with some work. Paragon is, excuse my French, fucking amazing. If you haven't played Paragon yet, please go and play it right now because it's so good. I'm not even being paid by them. It's just great.
Yeah, I can't wait to play, actually.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. It's absolutely amazing. But yeah, I definitely think things will slowly but surely overtake. But I think CS:GO is still on the rise. I think League of Legends stopped rising a little while ago now.
Okay, cool. And then again, I've basically just taken like a billion questions that he's asked, but there's another 2 questions from him. But the first one is, he's basically said, Renegades and Manalight have pulled ahead of the pack quite considerably, establishing themselves the 2 leaders of UK LoL eSports. Do you think this is down to their backing, or is the rest of the UK scene just struggling to play catch up?
No, I think like the #1 thing to bear in mind when it comes to the Banditos and Manalight is, I did hear that question correctly. We're talking about Banditos and Manalight being top of the scene.
Yeah.
The #1 thing to bear in mind is look at their rosters comparatively to the rosters of the other teams. Like, you have 4/5 challenger players on each of those teams, and you have high diamond and masters players on the other teams with some challenger players. Like, yes, they are good strategically. Yes, they are good as teams, but they are also just really good players. Like, that's an indisputable fact about those lineups. It's just how it is. So you can't ignore that factor. That is, I mean, the organizations obviously can help that team, and they're going to have regimented practice, and obviously there's been so much talk on Twitter about coaching and things. I'm not even going to go into that. I'm not even going to open that kind of worms. But like, you've just got 2 sets of 5 really good players that understand the game to a macro level better than their opponents do, and you're seeing the results unfold in front of your eyes. Like, I honestly think the biggest difference between like the top 2 and the rest of the league is mechanical skill and general game like macro understanding of the game, because macro isn't something that you really learn about just in solo queue. You have to do rank 5s to understand that. So I think it's just a matter of how much they practice as a 5 and how much more of an advantage you get from a lot of that practice than like if that practice was spent doing solo queue. That would be my answer. I realize that I worded that weirdly, but I think I got my point across.
Okay, cool. Then the last question he asks is, what do you think of the state of shoutcasting in the UK at present? Does something need to change, and if so, what?
The state of UK shoutcasting? Don't really know what.
I don't know if he means like,
exactly
are there
means
enough people involved, or like the people involved? Yeah, I don't know.
When it comes to like involvement, I think there's plenty of people involved. There's like, obviously you look at the UK Shoutcaster group, there's lots and lots of people in there. There's a lot of people keen to get involved. There's not very many people that are like dedicated to it, but there doesn't have to be at the amateur level. Like, you don't have to dedicate your life to it just to cast a few tournaments every so often. I think, like, from my perspective, in terms of League of Legends, you've got like Kiernan is about to stop casting League of Legends. I'm like, I'm in charge of getting another caster now for League of Legends, so now I have to make a decision on who I want to do the next Premiership and things. It depends on, like, I mean, obviously there are names that immediately spring up, but it all depends on availability and things like that. So there's going to be a shift in terms of casting in the next sort of few months. There's going to be a shift of who the big names are that are casting the Premiership and casting Insomnia and stuff. But I think one thing that people often forget when it comes to this stage, because this kind of thing happens like maybe once a year, like there is always more people that want to get involved that will replace the shoes of the previous people, you know, or fill the shoes of the previous people. There will always be like more people to cast Insomnia. There will always be more people to cast the Premiership, and they might like Kiernan. So I'm just going to use Kiernan as an example because it's a perfect example for the situation. Kiernan has big shoes to fill, and I'm not just talking about his actual shoe size. He's a very, very good caster, and he's a very experienced caster. He's also a very good friend of mine. So it's going to be very difficult for me to actually replace him, like, and be happy with the replacement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily even to do with his replacement. That's to do with how good he is. But like over the course of then that next like 3 months, whoever it is that steps up to become kind of the #1 colour in the UK, because I personally would consider Kiernan to be the #1 colour in the UK, probably Vedius a very, very close second. I think they're both very, very good casters. But whoever it is that replaces him, like over the next however many months, will become that #1 spot. You know, like if I die tomorrow, there's gonna be other play-by-plays that can step in, like, and take my place casting the Premiership. Like, there is always new people, and they might not be as good to begin with, but then over time, over using practice and things, they will become better, and they will get as good as, if not better.
Okay. Well, let's hope you don't die tomorrow, eh?
I'll try not to. I'll do my very best, but I can't promise anything.
Would have to have
I do
a quick
know 2
replacement.
doctors, though, conveniently.
Yeah, that's
casting
good.
has given me access to 2 doctors, so can't complain about it.
So actually, there's another question I found it really interesting, and I am probably going to butcher this guy's name. I tried to Google it beforehand, so I'm just going to use that as the pronunciation. So if it's wrong, my apologies. But I think it's Jem Yatek. And he said, like, basically, like, what are your opinions on the fact that, like, Monte and the other two have refused to commentate due to not being paid fairly in comparison to other shoutcasters for other games?
I'm glad this came up. I thought this would come up. So I think they are perfectly within their rights to protest that. Like, why? It honestly, if you read that letter, why does it not make sense for them to do that? There's no reason for them to, like, at the end of the day, they get paid enough. They're not struggling for money if they don't do MSI. So the biggest point in that letter that they wrote to take away is the part where they say it's not like about this one specific event. It's not like we just want more money right now. It's if we don't set the precedent now, if we just allow Riot to pay us less right now, then that will be a continuation, not just for us, but for other freelance casters in the future. That is a very, very important fact. Like, if just as an example, like, if Riot, I have no idea what Riot pays casters or anything. I do not know the numbers. I'm literally pulling these numbers out of my head right now. But, like, say they want to pay them £5,000 for the event or whatever, you know, like, and CSGO are getting paid £10,000 for the event. If you settle for that £5,000, then that becomes standard for League of Legends, like, forever, until someone argues that, until someone fights for that. But, like, how the fuck do you fight that up to 10,000? How the hell do you persuade an employer to double your wage when you've previously done it for that wage?
Yeah.
There is no way to win that argument. So if they don't make it happen now, it never will happen. So I think I agree with them wholeheartedly.
Okay, cool. And then Amy Terry has also asked, now that your career has kick-started, where do you see yourself in the future, or have you achieved your aspiration?
This is a really tricky question because this changes. Like when I first started at ESL, I didn't know whether in the future I would like. When I very first started at ESL UK, I actually still aspired to be a caster for Riot. Like I saw this as a stepping stone to get into casting for Riot, which was bad of me at the time anyway, but I no longer see that as my goal. My goal is not to cast for Riot at this point. Maybe like as a freelancer one day, like doing like an IEM or something, but it would be through ESL. Like I want to work for ESL. That is set in stone for me now. Like this is an absolutely fantastic company, and I fully want to continue working for them for a very, very long time. In terms of like actual personal aspirations, I mean, I don't really have a set goal that you can like quantify, but I want to. I would say a good goal to have. Like I'm kind of just making up a goal on the spot right now, but a good goal for me, I think, would be to become the name that people think of when it comes to commentary for a certain game. That's the next step for me, because I like realistically kind of saying like, oh, I want to be the world's most famous caster. Like it's great on paper, but it's not a realistic goal yet. Like look at D-Man, look at Joe Miller. These guys have been casting for years and years and years, and that's how they got to the position they're in. So I still have a long way to go until I'm anywhere near that level. And if I ever get to that level, let's bear in mind there are a lot of casters that have been casting a long time that never get to that level, and I certainly aspire to get to that level. But the first step now for me is becoming a major name for a specific title. So when people think of me, they think of that title, and when people think of that title, they think of me. That's the goal right now.
Okay, cool. Do you have any like shout outs, plugins, or any like last words you want to say?
Love your neighbor as you would want to be. No. Follow me on Twitter, I guess, at ESL Munchables. I could follow ESL UK, follow TCA, follow people. I don't know. I don't really have many shout-outs, to be honest. Just follow me on Twitter, I guess. I think the majority of people in here are UK people anyway, so
Yeah.
I don't think there's many people that would follow me off this, because I think I'm like reading chat and I know pretty much every name in chat anyway.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like the gang. But there is one question from Guy actually in chat. Did I start as play-by-play or color caster? I've always been play-by-play. Never done color. I've done color just because people were short of casters or whatever, and it was a small stream. But I don't see color as fun or exciting or anything. It doesn't like jump out to me like as something I would even want to move into.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, so just some last words from me then. Obviously, thank you to everyone who tuned in on this episode, whether that's like live or on, if you've somehow managed to catch it on Twitch and before I delete it off there forever, or most likely on YouTube afterwards. Thank you to you as well, obviously, Munch, for coming on today. And next week for episode 10, which I can't believe it's 10 already, we have Dandy Chap on, who is a jungler in the UK scene, and we'll be talking to him about basically how he got into that and how he created one of the biggest UK groups for League of Legends as well. So yeah, thank you everyone, and see you all next week.
Bye guys.